They thought she was just a quiet farm girl. They thought no one would come. But the moment they tied her to that tree, a man thousands of miles away stopped breathing, because he felt something was wrong. And when a Delta Force operator feels something is wrong, someone's about to learn what real fear looks like. Before we begin, smash that subscribe button, because stories like this aren't just entertainment, they're warnings. The sun dipped over the rolling fields of rural Montana, painting everything in deep gold and quiet peace. The only movement was a gentle breeze pushing through cornrows, and a girl walking along the dirt path with a brown satchel over her shoulder. Emma Walker, 26, soft-spoken, thoughtful, and always alone, had lived on the Walker farmland all her life. The locals called her the quiet farm girl, not out of cruelty, but because she rarely raised her voice above a whisper. She worked mornings in the fields, afternoons at a small feed store, and evenings tending to animals that obeyed her gentle hands more than they ever obeyed shouting men. But what people didn't know was the reason for her silence. She hadn't been waiting for someone to notice her, she had already been noticed by someone extraordinary. She had married quietly at 21, no wedding party, no photos online, no announcements. Only the county clerk and her parents knew. Her husband, Daniel Kane, wasn't around much, because he belonged to a unit people whispered about but never fully understood. Newspaper reporters called them ghosts, shadows, America's invisible wall. Delta Force operators didn't exist until they had to, and even then, they barely existed. Emma never bragged, never hinted, she simply lived, but her quietness made her a target for 3 local boys whose lives revolved around showing off: Troy, Mason, and Kyle. They were older teens, restless, bored, and angry at the world for not crowning them kings. Their frustration needed a place to land, and Emma, walking home alone every day, was too easy a choice. It started with name-calling, then blocking her path, then stealing fruit from her satchel. She brushed it off, hoping kindness might discourage them. It didn't. Bullies feed on silence. And one cool September evening, when the town carnival brightened the skies nearby and most adults were gone enjoying the celebration, the 3 boys followed Emma down the dirt road with a different kind of energy, reckless, stupid, and hungry for attention from each other. "What's the hurry, farm girl?" Troy called. Emma kept walking, shoulders tight. Kyle jogged ahead, blocking her path. "You think you're better than us? Too good to talk." "No," she whispered. "I just need to get home." Mason picked up a coil of old rope lying near a broken fence. "Maybe we should help you stay a while." Emma froze. The world suddenly felt too quiet, too empty, too far from help. The boys didn't strike her, not in any harmful way. But they grabbed her wrists, laughing, dragging her toward a large oak tree that stood crooked on the roadside, its branches twisting like fingers reaching for the sky. She begged them to stop, voice shaking but still soft. They tied her, not to torture her, but because in their minds they were teaching her a lesson for acting stuck up. They tied her wrists loosely but enough that she couldn't slip free. They didn't imagine she might genuinely be in distress. They didn't imagine night coyotes were already prowling. They didn't imagine temperatures would drop. They didn't imagine she had someone who would come for her. As the last sliver of sunlight vanished, the boys took photos, laughed, and walked away, thinking the joke would end when someone found her later. They didn't think she had a phone hidden in her pocket. They didn't think she'd dial one number. A number that was only ever used in emergencies. A number that could pull a soldier out of the deepest shadows. When Daniel Kane's satellite radio buzzed in the middle of a classified night exercise in a desert thousands of miles away, he didn't hesitate. He didn't ask permission. He didn't notify command. He simply heard his wife whisper, "Daniel, I need you," before the call dropped. And the warrior inside him woke up like a storm breaking loose. Daniel had lived through raids, insurgent traps, black site sieges, and operations that would never reach public ears. The world called men like him operators. His team called him Reaper, not because of violence, but because of his precision and calm presence wherever danger lurked. When others panicked, Daniel became still as stone. Until now, for the first time, he felt his heart race. His commander saw his expression shift and didn't need details. "Family." Daniel nodded once. The commander exhaled. "Go." Operators understand loyalty. They understand vows. And they understand that when the quietest man suddenly rushes, something sacred is at stake. Daniel boarded a military transport within 30 minutes. He didn't yell. He didn't swear. He simply moved with the kind of focus that made everyone step aside. During the 14-hour flight back to US soil, he didn't sleep. He pieced together everything he knew. Emma didn't call unless she was truly in danger. She would never panic unless she was cornered. She said, "I need you, not, help me." Which meant she believed he would come. Trust like that carried weight heavier than any weapon. By the time wheels touched American ground, Daniel had already contacted his military friends, old sheriff allies, and Emma's parents. None had heard from her. That silence was more terrifying than anything he'd faced on deployment. He drove himself straight to the Montana fields before sunrise. Fog rolled across the ground like smoke from a distant fire. And then, he saw her, tied to the tree, shivering, clothes dirty, eyes closed. She wasn't unconscious, just exhausted, cold, and drained from hours of fear. When Daniel reached her, he didn't speak. He simply pulled her into his arms, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'm here," he whispered. The words weren't a reassurance. They were a promise. Emma trembled. I'm sorry, I didn't know who else." "You did the right thing," he said softly. But beneath his steady voice was a simmering storm. Because as he untied the rope, Daniel noticed footprints. Teen-sized. A trail leading back toward town. A trail he could follow blindfolded. Emma clung to him. "I just want to go home." "And you will," he replied, lifting her gently. "But first, I need to know their names." She hesitated, because she was still kind, still empathetic, even to those who hurt her. But Daniel didn't need names. He already knew which boys had always eyed her resentfully. And by sunrise, the entire town would know exactly who had crossed a line so deep, no ordinary apology could erase it. The next morning, the boys bragged about their prank, trying to spin the story to seem harmless. But rumors traveled faster than fire in a dry field, and townspeople whispered about a black SUV seen barreling down the road before dawn. Troy, Mason, and Kyle began to feel uneasy. Something in the air felt wrong. Like the world suddenly had eyes. Then the sheriff arrived, not to arrest them, but to question them. The boys lied, blamed each other, claimed they knew she'd be fine, claimed they barely tied her. But the sheriff had already spoken to Daniel. He'd seen the rope burns, small but real. He'd seen the tree. He'd seen the temperature drop. Recorded that night. "You boys didn't just pull a prank," the sheriff said. "You left someone alone in the cold. Animals prowl those woods at night." That could have ended very differently. The boys paled, because for the first time, they understood there were consequences. Then the sheriff said something that froze their blood. "Her husband is back in town." The boys exchanged looks. They knew of Daniel Kane. Everyone knew the stories. The veteran who lived quietly when home, polite, respectful, almost invisible. Whose presence alone could silence a bar fight. They knew he had a reputation. But they did not know he was Delta Force. Not until last night. At that exact moment, Daniel walked into town. Not angry, not yelling, simply walking. But the entire street quieted, because something about him felt controlled, contained, like a storm bottled just beneath the surface. He went first to the sheriff's office. The sheriff took one look at him and stepped aside. "Daniel, don't worry, they're going to face consequences. Legally. I'm not here for revenge," Daniel said calmly. "I'm here for understanding." And he meant it. Daniel didn't want to hurt anyone. He wanted the boys to comprehend the magnitude of what they'd done. To see the ripple effect of cruelty. But when the boys saw him through the window, they panicked. Because Daniel Kane didn't look furious. He looked disappointed. And somehow, that was far worse. When the door opened, silence filled the room. Daniel stepped forward. "You tied my wife to a tree," he began quietly. "You left her at night. Alone, cold, scared." The boys couldn't speak. Daniel looked each of them in the eyes. "You think you're strong because you had numbers. Because she was gentle. Because you assumed no one would come." He took a slow breath. "But strength isn't hurting people weaker than you. Strength is protecting them." Kyle, the youngest, burst into tears first. Mason's jaw shook. Troy, usually the toughest, couldn't meet Daniel's gaze. "I'm not here to threaten you," Daniel continued. "I'm here to make sure you understand the weight of your actions so you never do it again, to anyone." The sheriff stepped in. "And you boys will be doing community service, counseling, restitution, and mandatory education programs. This is not optional." Daniel nodded. "That's enough for me." Then he added softly, "And you owe her an apology she never asked for, but deserves." A week later, the boys approached Emma's farm, supervised by the sheriff. Emma stood on the porch, nervous but steady. Daniel stayed inside, letting her choose how this moment unfolded. Troy spoke first, choking on the words. "I'm sorry. We were stupid." Mason added, "We didn't know it'd get so cold. We didn't think." Kyle sobbed quietly. "We're sorry, Miss Emma." Emma didn't scold them. She simply said, "I forgive you. Just don't become men who cause pain. Become men who heal it." Her words, simple, soft, hit harder than any punishment. Over the next months, something unexpected happened. The boys changed, truly changed. They helped repair the fence they'd dragged her past. They volunteered at animal shelters. They took part in the anti-bullying youth program Daniel anonymously funded. And one day, Troy asked Daniel, "Why didn't you get revenge?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Revenge teaches nothing. Responsibility teaches everything." The boys nodded, because they were finally starting to understand. Emma healed. Daniel returned to duty months later, but with more frequent leave, more calls home, more letters. Emma wasn't just the quiet farm girl anymore. She was the woman who survived cruelty with grace, and inspired change where others expected vengeance. And as the story spread through towns, counties, and states, people learned a lesson that echoed far beyond Montana. Never mistake quiet for weakness. Never mistake kindness for surrender. And never, ever assume the person you harm has no one who loves them enough to move mountains.